You always say that, Tanner, and I'm always still scared to just like start talking. Like now.
Good morning, wherever you are. This is QuianaDenae. I am excited to kick off our show today. This is the Church of the Larger Fellowship, VUU, and I am here in sunny, bright, beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm pretty sure the temperature is somewhere on the other side of 20. I can't wait to put my kids in snow pants and send them down any hill I find. I don't think they realize that once you have on your snow pants, you are saying I am willing to go down any hill. And so I'm the parent who will push you. So that's where we are. I want to toss it over to my friend Michael Tino up in the peaks.
Hi, everyone. Michael Tino here in Peekskill, New York, in the beautiful Hudson Valley north of New York City. It is actually gray today. It snowed this morning. We had a 2-hour delay from online school because, they're forcing the teachers to actually work from the school building. So the 2-hour delay made sense in terms of the teachers being safe to drive in because there was 3/4 of an inch of snow on the ground. I have feelings, and we'll unpack those as the hour goes on about all of this. But life is okay here in Peekskill, and I might have to pop out to facilitate first grade happening in the dining room 6 feet away from me. Christina Rivera, how are you?
Hi, friends. I'm Christina Rivera. I'm coming to you from Augusta County, Virginia, where it is a balmy 30 degrees. And we're expecting another snowstorm, which makes me very excited because I want to take some drone footage of our farm in the snow. So I'm excited to try that out. And it's just looking really blah outside. That's kind of the way it is. It's just the way it is these days. Don, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm Don Fortune. I am the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Jersey Shore. The church is in Galloway. I'm here in Egg Harbor City, where it is 32 degrees, and it occasionally we've got 1 or 2 snowflakes coming down every now and then just to sort of make a point. We did get like 3 or 4 inches overnight, which meant I actually had to dig out my snow shovel, which I had thus far been able to not use this year. And I'm kind of resentful that I actually had to do it. I'm from Maine, so 3 or 4 inches of snow is like, whatever, it'll melt. But down here, people get all worked up about it, and they insist that you shovel the sidewalk in front of your house. So I was out in my sweatpants this morning doing that and grumbling about the unfairness of life, that sort of thing. Hey, it's February, and I missed you all last week, so I'm glad to be back. And are we introducing Tanner, or are we just referring to Tanner as the person behind the little chalice logo thing? We're introducing, yeah. Oh, there's Tanner. Hey, Tanner. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning. My name's Tanner. I'm the tech for the VUU, so I'll be taking your comments from YouTube and putting them into Zoom for our hosts. So comment below, and I'll make sure the hosts see them. Thanks.
Yay, Tanner! So as you all know, every week we kind of go through a little bit of a push-pull. How do we give you great content, but also take care of ourselves? So that's why Miss Aisha isn't here. She's got other obligations. That's why Don wasn't here. Sometimes we have to tap out. And we're also recognizing the ethnicity at our community is also really tired. So we're like really trying to balance calling folks in and just being present and being a voice for other folks, or being a voice of community. So know that we're clearly aware that we are your guest once again, but we're here because we know that other folks need space. And as we started this week, we're like, what should we talk about? And we went through many topics, and where we landed was parenting during a pandemic, layered pandemics. And so I want to just make sure we start this conversation on a level set to get level set. There's folks who are parenting who are biological parents. There's aunties, uncles, wubsies, MAPAs, all kinds of folks. We will use the best big language that we can. It's not our intention to not be inclusive. We recognize that parenting looks like a lot of things. We recognize aunties and uncles and folks who parent animals. And even if you aren't someone who has children in your life on a daily basis, we are a connected community. And henceforth, you are caring for being a part of a parent or a kid's life somehow, even if you don't always know it. So that's kind of the container and the frame I want to offer as we get started. So let's get into it. Chris, Michael, Don, we can talk about, let's talk about education. Let's start there. Because Michael, you alluded to that a little bit, a 2-hour delay and things going on. So say more, speak up, speak up, speak up.
You want me to say more? How much time do we have? 54 minutes? Okay. So here in New York, we went on pandemic lockdown almost a year ago. It was the second week in March. I think it was March 9th or 8th last year. That was the last day of in-person school. And last year, schools had no plans for what they would do in a pandemic when they had to shut down. So it meant that all education ceased for a while. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to have jobs that could be done from our homes, we did our jobs and parented and educated our children all at the same time every day. My home office became my dining room. I worked from my dining room from March until June because the dining room was the dining room. It was, I call it Raymond Street Elementary School, and it was the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Westchester's minister's office. And when I came on board the lead ministry team at CLF, I needed to move to the breakfast nook off the kitchen because I needed a little bit. So this is the breakfast nook off the kitchen. The kitchen is literally right there. Okay, so listen, y'all don't get to see this. That's my kitchen, folks. The kitchen is right there because I still need to feed my child. And she's in the dining room, which is still Raymond Street Elementary School. Education has changed this church year or this school year because they figured out some stuff over the summer, and my heart goes out to educators who basically had to learn how to do their job in a completely different way from scratch. I don't know how they did it, how they figured anything out, and yet they figured some stuff out. But this year we have this mishmash of in-person and hybrid. And yes, this winter they've decided that because there are 6 snow days built into our instructional calendar every year, they will just have snow days when it snows and cancel online school. Even though everybody is capable of doing all of this without leaving our homes because we've done it. And so education is weird. It's we're doing the best we can. Like my child is not gonna like actually be at grade level.
And so that begs a couple questions. What does it mean to be at grade level? Who set that bar and how does it move regardless of pandemic? And then our experience as parents whose kids are in, school, what's the word I'm looking for, who are in day school is not the right word, who are in grade school is very different than Chris's experience, whose kids, are they in their second year now? I'm not supposed to say where they go. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Oh, okay. So like all of that, like education looks so different, right? When you're looking at grade school versus high school, when there's sports and academics that they need to progress, and when you're looking at college and it's a closed or small campus. So Chris, I want to have you chime in a little bit about parenting for folks who have a lot of autonomy, right?
Yeah. And I think, so I think back to last year and what it was like to parent high school seniors, as they saw their high school senior year just disintegrate. And we were on spring break. So their last day of high school was February 28th of in-person classes. And then we went on spring break. And during spring break, they said, we're going to give you another week of spring break. So they gave us 2 weeks of spring break while they tried to figure out what to do. And then they went to all virtual for the rest of the year. They went to all virtual actually for the rest of March. And then at the end of March, they made the decision to go all virtual for the rest of the year, which for us is through May. And that they were canceling, everything having to do with senior year. And that was really rough. That was just super hard. It was the culmination of 13 years of work to get to a goal, and then have that goal, the celebration of that goal, kind of just change. So that was hard. There was a lot of processing. And one of the things I remind people even now is it's okay to process the grief that you have. Hi, Nora. It's okay to process the grief that you have about missing those milestones. That's one of the things that I try and remind people is
Nora,
it's okay to miss those milestones and to be able to be sad about that. Even if my kids were like, well, but we don't have COVID, and we don't have this and that, and yeah, that's true. We need to recognize the blessings in our life, but it's also okay to recognize the areas in which we're sad. And so I would say that for parents whose high school juniors were last year, who are high school seniors this year, and are still going to be missing out on a lot of those milestones. My son's college opted to defer all of their first year students starting college to January. So they brought back sophomores, juniors, and seniors in the fall to kind of get like COVID ready, because they figured that population had already had the transition of going to college and already knew what college was like at Brown. So the transition for them was just going to be, how do we have college in a pandemic? And then, so my kids didn't go back to in-person learning, or not, they still haven't had in-person learning for a year. They are now back, they're now at Brown, but all of their classes are virtual. So they're at a school.
So, Chris, can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. What did they do in between, graduation in May, big in May and January?
So we had a family conversation about that, because that's a long time for folks who were expecting to be independent, to be at home. It's a really long time to still be at home with the parents, and the parents, we were expecting for them to be away, and they were expecting to be away. So we had a conversation about what it was going to be like to be at home, and what that I was going to be working from home. I had just gotten a new job with the CLF, and I really just wanted them to have some kind of experience. So we talked about internships. We talked about maybe they should start their own podcast. We talked about like lots of different things that they could do. And we talked about just not doing any of that and just kind of checking out. Like that was okay too. And luckily, my sister-in-law very, very generously allowed them to stay at a rental property that she has that's usually closed during the off season. So they got roommates, and they went and stayed at this house, and quarantined there with their roommates for that period of time. And it was great because they got that independence. They were cooking for themselves. They were doing their own laundry. They were cleaning the place themselves. They were, all of that. But they, they were also able to just use that time to read, to make music, they were, they talk about it now. They were very privileged to be able to do that. One of my sons got a job so that they could all eat. And because that was one of the things we were like, we're not financing that. So you guys have to finance it. And so they, took turns, like the one son that wasn't working was cooking more, and the roommate who didn't know how to cook was cleaning up after the one that was cooking.
Mutual aid, shared responsibility.
Yes, and they only had, they had one car between the four or five of them. I can't remember. At one point it was five of them. So they had to, work out how to share the car. And so it was really good. It was making the best lemonade out of the lemons that they had, while also recognizing that they were super fortunate to have that, to have those lemons.
Thank you. I wanted to tap into Don. So I would love to hear some Uncle Buck stories. How did you get that nickname?
Oh gosh, I don't think I can tell half of those on this program. I'm like, well, I can't. No, not that one. Yeah.
So then let me back the question up. Tell me about how caregiving and uncling comes into your world. How does that work?
Geez, I don't know. I mean, I'm a parish minister, so I have in my congregation a handful of families who have children of various sizes, and I listen to them and I watch them, and the needs are so varied. I've got a family that has their youngest, I think, went off to college last year. I've got two of those that went off to college, and then I've got another one who's got elementary school kids and is a single mom, so that has its own challenges. And then I've got another my DRE, God bless her, she's a homeschooler, so she's sort of been like through this whole thing, she's like, why is everybody freaked out, right? Because this is just what she does. She's just like, oh, it's not that hard, actually, let me show you, right? Because she's been homeschooling forever. So for her, it's not that challenging, although it is kind of challenging having everybody cooped up in the house. So, and as somebody who has never had a small person in my house I'm in charge of, I don't pretend to be able to give advice. My best thing I can do really is listen, with an empathetic ear, and then say, is there anything I can do that would be helpful to you in this time? And sometimes that's, getting on Zoom and doing art with the kids so mom can, just do the damn dishes. And sometimes it's, before the pandemic, I've had some of the kids come over to my house because, I have the forge out back, and they are fascinated by the fire and the metal and the hammers. And usually they'll heat stuff up, and I'll let them hit it once or twice, and they decide that the hammer is way heavier than is fun, and then we go do something else. But yeah, right now my role seems to be in supporting the parents who are going through, who are just like, from all I understand, parenthood doesn't come with a book.
Nope.
Right? It kids have their own plan.
And if it did, the book would be wrong.
Yes. It would be in invisible ink, and it would rewrite itself every day.
Right? See, so parents are experiencing this thing, and two kids are very different, right? So it's like what worked with the first one doesn't work with the second one, and the third one has something else to do entirely. So, and I can't pretend to be any kind of expert. Mostly, like I said, what I do is I listen. And so parents who are parenting sort of by the seat of their pants anyway are now parenting in this extra sort of challenging, with a whole new set of rules and dynamics and restrictions on young people who are designed to test restrictions, Like that is what children like. I've had developmental psychology, and I know that that's part of their job as they're growing is to push, right? Is to push and find out where the limits are and try and push those. And with this new set of restrictions and limits and everything else, and then you've got the developmental brainiac developmental biology stuff that happens with children and their need for risk-taking behavior and their need to seek autonomy and the magical thinking that happens, into adolescence and young adulthood. The I won't get caught, I won't get hurt, this won't happen, like all of that. I can't even imagine. So I listen. I listen. I offer to send over food sometimes. Can I buy you a pizza? But hi, Nora. That child is just adorable. Hi, Nora.
So my babies popped in beforehand. We usually have like the 15 minutes before I come online, I do like hey, I'm gonna go online. Do you have what you need? Kind of check in. So I made at like literally 11:51, I was making chocolate milk. And here's my situation over here in Ann Arbor is that I share them with their dad. So when he got, kind of school time relief, I was fine taking them every other weekend. But when COVID, he wasn't getting that school time relief, if that makes sense. So we moved to him having them Monday through Friday, and then I have them Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's worked. It's been a really great system. We both get, me and my co-parent both get a moment to like catch our breath. We're both doing the things that we're best at. Nobody's having to he's really good at academics with our babies. And that's, hey, do that. I'm really good with creative space and that sort of thing. So we move in that space. And then my kids, so like today they're on mid-week, mid-spring break, or I don't know, they ain't got no school. So, and they're not usually here on Thursday. So they're here. That's new and weird. And so we're trying to how does Thursday feel? And I'm like, I gotta work all day. I don't know who. Glad we have Wi-Fi. So it's like they don't have anything, they don't. So it's an interesting thing. One of the things that we haven't talked about that I wanted to bring into the mix that I guess I bring in particular is that I'm co-parenting. So automatically I have to leave my house. Automatically I have, I'm interfacing with a group of folks. Matthias and I had to agree on our COVID risk procedures and policies. And when we want to change them, we have to talk to each other. So we have to agree about education. We have to agree about our safety protocols. At one point, I wanted to go somewhere outside of our bubble, and I wasn't asking him for permission, but I wasn't trying to put my family at risk either. So on top of, general parenting and education providing during layered pandemics, which we're going to talk about, also parenting with someone else requires a different kind of energy, a different kind of skill. And if you don't think your safety is entwined with somebody else's, co-parenting will tell you it is. Everything he does, everything I do impacts our children's health. They wanted a double mask, so mama has to double mask. We, can't leave the house without that now, which I'm fine with, but it was really an impetus from that, Matthias was like, hey, I want a double mask. So I'm like, I guess I got to too. That's the level of, care we're giving our, that's another barrier we're trying to add in to reduce our risk. And it's not harming me, it's not harming my family, so I'm gonna do it. But it is difficult to traverse all of this with other folks. We're not alone. Go ahead, Michael, I'm sorry.
To connect to some things that we've had in the chat, Kathy Bauer talked about caregiving elderly parents. And I think your experience of negotiating risk inside and outside of your house is probably something that folks who are doing caregiving for elderly parents who don't live with them, even ones who do, probably also have to deal with. Just the the risk of being able to go over an elderly parent's house. I know people who drop food off for their elderly parents but won't go in the house, for example, because they don't want their elderly parents to have to go to a grocery store because it's too much. But but because the way the bubbles work, they won't go in the house either. And so, I imagine with co-parents and blended families, and relationships that exist across households, any relationship that exists across households, those things have to be carefully negotiated, and there has to be a lot of trust.
Oh God, yeah. And the other thing I guess I wanted to throw out there, I keep saying the term layered pandemics. And so for me, I don't think about just about COVID. I think about how we as a family had to deal with George Floyd, talking to my kids about elections, talking to my kids about their mental health, and also about vaccines. What does it mean to be vaccinated? All of those things. So as much as I'm trying to process and understand things for myself, I also have these little folks who are getting bombarded with information. Their access to information is unfettered, right? Like they got Google too. So they're smart. My kids listen to NPR. They're very aware. They have questions, and I'm trying to understand it for me and translate it for them. It's not easy because there is layers going on to this. And then you have things like January 6th. How do you explain that to Nora? How do you help a family process that? How do I say to my little Black son, hey, George, how do I talk about George Floyd to my kids about being in their Black skin? How do we navigate all of that? So for me, although it's COVID and it's education, for me, there's a lot more subtext going on. I definitely have been worried about my kids' mental health. Hearing reports of youth, probably that age, 12 to 17, experiencing a lot more suicidal ideation and suicidal thought, because the levels of isolation, nobody anticipated it. We didn't think this would happen. So we don't have skills in our toolkit to like address it. And if we don't as adults, I know kids don't. Some of them might, but not all of our kids are like, built from resilient wood. So,
QuianaDenae, that's a good point. Is that we didn't anticipate this. We didn't know what life would be like during a pandemic, and I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the decision that we collectively made, as a nation, to continue with school, to continue with trying to have a sense of normalcy during something that is like a cultural distinction level event.
mm-hmm.
And still we have this expectation somehow that education and our children's lives are somehow supposed to be the same. The fact that they're still doing SATs and ACTs and the standards of learning tests and all of those kinds of things, that we're still expecting a second grader to still have a second grade curriculum and be competent at that at the end of the year. Like I just wonder about that. Like in some ways I think, yeah, we need to keep normalcy for the children because that does impart a sense of stability for them. And psychologically that's super important. And yet we're also still imposing these expectations that I don't know, I think are too much. I don't know.
I think it's economics. I think it's all about money. There would not be a push to put kids back to school if it weren't costly to keep them and their parents out. And I think I think our children are going to be put at unnecessary risk to sort of placate the markets.
One of my questions remains, when we say our kids are getting ahead or behind, what are they getting ahead or behind of? And also, what if and that's something me and my co-parent talked about, what if they didn't have an academic responsibility this year at all? What if this year was learning about adaptation and learning how to cook, or learning how to use tools, or learning how to do things? I mean, very much more homeschool-esque in that life is a schoolyard, but also just taking that yoke of educational weight off of parents, off of kids, off of this constant expectation that you should be learning and moving forward. And there's a lot to say about moving parallel. There's a lot to say about just surviving. And to take that yoke of education and expectation off, I think would have given us all a collective sigh of relief and a collective amount of space to really explore something different, something new, something we hadn't even dreamed of. But now, as the NAP ministry says, we are so tired between crisis teaching, crisis parenting, crisis working, we don't have time to imagine into this brand new unfiltered space that could just be, we could just gobble up something new, but we're so busy trying to eat this like 2,000-year-old, Thanksgiving dinner is just kind of ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And, I think that there are things that kids need. My child is an only child. And so the opportunity to interact with people who are not her parents is invaluable. The opportunity to actually have socialization with kids her age is invaluable. And even if that's on Zoom or Google Classroom or whatever, it's important. And she looks forward to it. And the math and the reading is fine. She loves math. She calls her grandparents every day and on FaceTime and makes them give her math programs or math problems to do. It's what she between her little points of school, she FaceTimes one or the other set of her grandparents and makes them give her math problems. So she loves the math. It's fun for her, but so it's good. We encourage her to have fun. We encourage her to have fun doing math, but just being with other kids online or in person has been so important for her. And that time last spring when she didn't see another person who was not a member of her family and her immediate family in person and everybody else on FaceTime for 6 months was rough. It was hard. Socially, it was hard.
So y'all know so one day me and my kids were having a nice little argument because we do that sometimes. And they were like kind of, having a pissy moment about all of this. And my pissy response, which I'm not going to say I was proud of it, but I will tell you the story anyway. I was like, do you know what I did? Like, this is what I did. My response to that lack of socialization was to start an entire program dedicated to youth that happens every Saturday. Called Blueberries. And Blueberries, the genesis really was me realizing that my kids weren't going to see other kids. They weren't going to see other Black kids. And then realizing I know a lot of cross-racially adopted Black kids whose parents, caregivers, and community is predominantly white, and they may have limited or no interaction with other Black people once we went into shelter in place. So we created Blueberries out of that need to have some very race-centered activity space. And I'm not, trying to be, cute. I'm just trying to say, I realized Black kids needed to see other Black kids, that other Black kids needed to see other Black kids. And I don't take that back at all. So just come back to the argument, my kids were like, and I was like, I even made you a whole entire program just so you could have Black friends, like during COVID. We are going outside for this walk. So we definitely had to create socialization. We definitely had to find a pod of folks whose risk was like ours. So we went swimming in the summer. We're still meeting outside right now. We, are probably going to go sledding with those folks tomorrow. And our double mask and our COVID risk, plan is in place. Like, you got to go pee before you leave. And we can only stay out for 2 hours because it's cold. It's 14 degrees. I love you and I want you to play, but it's 14 degrees outside. And so it's just been that socialization piece has been huge. And then just to really, because I can about blueberries, we have 15 to 20 kids who we're seeing every Saturday at 2:00. We have folks coming in to mentor. We've been talking about elders, ancestors, and comrades. These kids are literally staying for an hour to 75 minutes, which for programming for youth right now in most brick and mortar churches is not hitting that for that age group. So it's been a real blessing, but socialization is real. My kids could care less about academia. That social piece, you cut them off of that. Woo! That was probably the hardest for my daughter, was the social piece. My son, he could find a toy car with the magnet on it and play for 3 hours and not realize I was in the room. So they're just so different about their needs. I want to come back around to something we talked about in the very beginning, you all, which is different ways to connect. Everybody can't be a parent, right? Not everybody's biologically connected. Not everybody's adopted kids. But the other roles of folks, and I just wanted to take the time to acknowledge, Don, you said buy somebody a pizza. If you're not directly connected with youth in your life, find a family. Volunteer to take kids sledding, because maybe you don't have to get in their car. Maybe you can meet at the neighborhood park. Offer to do gift certificates for meals. Those are huge. Me not cooking a meal and having to do dishes, I'm just like, when any of that happens, it just changes my whole life. It's just like they love me. So there is things that you can do to support our connected community. Don't think because you're not a bio parent, you can't play a role. I have folks in my community, young girls, who I'm an auntie to them. And that, even though I'm a mom, I'm still an auntie. That's not going anywhere. I joked before we started that Chris and Aisha are two different styles of aunties, but they're still aunties and they're still great people. So yeah, I just want to put that out there, that it's not about biological connection, but we are a community of connected people. And every move in the boat shifts the boat somehow. So how do you want to shift the boat and contribute?
Yeah,
I feel like
I'd give
Go
a
ahead,
shout out
Chris.
for all of the UUs that have been aunties, uncles, nibblings, siblings, all of it for my kids in Unitarian Universalist spaces. Because I have no doubt in my mind that my kids would not still be Unitarian Universalists except for, Janice and Hope and Bart and Razik and Sarah and Sana and all of those folks that continually Leah continually check in on them and have since they were since they knew that I'm like they started attending UU church. Well, they were christened by a UU minister and started attending UU church when they were 2, and they have this whole community of people that are rooting for them, that are checking in on them. They check in on them even when I don't know. I remember going to Revolutionary Love at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. And, they were kind of getting older. They were like, I guess they were at that time, I think they were like 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. And I allowed them to walk from the conference back to our Airbnb, back and forth by themselves because it wasn't very far. And damned if I wouldn't get texts from their aunties saying, "Hey, Chris, I just saw the boys walking down the street and just wanted to check in with you and let you know that I saw them and let you know that I knew that they saw me." And so, and that was like beautiful. It was so beautiful because they knew that they were loved. They knew that they were getting an eyeball on them even when I wasn't there. And I knew who had my kids back, right? I knew who I could trust with my children. And that to me is the part of Unitarian Universalism that is just so beautiful and keeps me here, is that we have the ability to parent, in very different ways. And we need that. Our kids need that. So if you are in a UU community, and you are, because you're watching The View and listening to The View, there are kids out there and youth and young adults out there that need you. They need to know that you love them. They need to know that you've got their back. They need to know that you're thinking about them. And that doesn't have to be some huge, show of support, but it can be a care package to all of those kids that you're so excited have bridged. Well, have you sent them a card? Have you sent them a care package? Like, I get the little boxes from United States Postal Service. They're like about this big, and I take them to CVS and I stuff them with stuff. Like, I just go around CVS and I put gift cards in it, and I put candy in it, and I put I go to the kids toy section and I find something cute in there, and I stuff it in there until I can't fit anything else in it, because it's prepaid. Like, it's the same cost to send it no matter what. And I label it and I send it out. And it's, it lets them know that we're thinking about them.
So yeah, if you knew of a college senior last year who's now a college freshman, or high school senior, college freshman, go in and find their address or find their parents and say, hey, parent, I'd love to send your kid a care gift, and just mail it off. I mean, I think that's an amazing idea to keep our youth connected. I think we don't always think about their needs. And, ramen goes a long way.
Like, if they stayed home, maybe they didn't go to college, maybe they took a gap year, maybe they went out and got a job, maybe they joined the armed forces, maybe
they're still in high school and struggling with this online nonsense.
Exactly. You've got a church directory. Pull out that church directory and put a card in the mail. It's like, we think about, as I was thinking about this show today, and I was like, okay, what are the resources? We need to get web links for people to be able to, resource, our families. And I'm like, shit, we don't need to resource our families with web links. We've got entire congregations that, let's face it, the majority of the people in our congregations are older, who do not have young children at home. That is our resource. That's our resource right there. If you had everybody in your congregation sending out a care package to every family in your care package in your congregation, they'd be set. They'd be on it. You don't need to wait for somebody to organize it. You've got the church directory. Pull out the church directory and send something.
And one of the things we're doing at UUAA, because y'all know I like to brag about my people, is we have an amazing collection of stories that have been read by the ministerial team. And they're all available online. So we started a thing called Babies in Bedtime. And so they play one of the stories, they do a little song, a little good night thing. It's only a half an hour, and it's once a week. And it's Sunday nights, and it's only ran about 2 or 3 times, but we're already using the resources that were there. You don't have to find the book. If we played it in service, guess what? It's already legit embedded. So the prep is small, but the work is big, that they're giving families space to be communal in a way that makes sense to them, right? Like, bedtime is very, much earlier. It feels a little different, the rhythm of it. And then, I'd love to get us to a place now. You got me thinking about where we could have grandparents come read stories, our elder wisdom share. So I'm going to write that down. But there's a lot of opportunities. I think I cut off Michael, though. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, if you can't afford even a little care gift, or like going to CVS and the post office stresses you out because of the COVID risk in your community, like, call people or FaceTime them. I mean, honestly, like, my kid spending FaceTime time with her grandparents has been a saving thing for us. And in the bricks and mortar congregation where I serve here in New York, our religious educator paired up every kid in the religious education program with an adult in the congregation to interview. And she found adults who were A, willing to speak to kids who we trusted, and B, who did good things in the community. So my kid interviewed a member of my congregation who is the president of our local food pantry, and talked about what she does with the food pantry, and like why it's necessary to have a food pantry and how that connects to her Unitarian Universalist values. And they recorded the interviews, and Darlene is making a movie out of it, and we're going to show it after worship, of our kids interviewing people in the congregation who do great things. And they were all, I mean, some of them are parents, but they're parents of young adults. None of them are parents of small kids. So it was really nice for these folks to say, okay, I'll spend an hour and a half with a kid in the congregation and just talk about good things I do in the community and my UU principles and values. And now my kid has a friend, right? Like, so she comes when I'm on Zoom, and she comes to see who I'm Zooming with. And she knows Chris and Aisha. She comes and says hi. She's in love with your glasses cord, QuianaDenae. She's like, I've never seen something
And
like
you
that
can be
before. I like
sure.
that.
And you can be sure that when Nora is 16 or 17 and is going to the Revolutionary Love Conference in New York, and I
That's
see
right.
her walking down the street,
You will
I'm
text
going
me.
to text you and I'll say, hey, I just saw Nora walking. We got
That's
our
right.
eyes on her. Everything's good. Because that's how we build community.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we haven't talked about that I think is worthy of just kind of sliding back in here is having hard conversations with our kids, or with young folks in our lives. How do we talk about January 6th? How do we talk about one of the most tumultuous elections? How do we talk about George Floyd? How do we prepare our kids for this ever-changing world that just, it doesn't stop, right? It just does not ever stop. It just keeps coming. Talking about George Floyd was hard because we are also from Minneapolis. And so my kids had questions like, did I go to any of those places that, were in the riot? And it's like, actually, you went to all of them, a bunch of them, because that was my main thoroughfare and where I used to work. And trying to help them understand what it means when there's political protest on every, landmass on the planet, to address racial disparities in how bodies are policed. Explaining, my kids were very politically aware before, but just them going like, wait a minute, how could Trump win? How could that even happen again? How are we even having this kind of conversation? Like my 10 and 12-year-old were like, this doesn't make sense to me. And so how do you, help them understand a world that doesn't make sense to you, right? Like, I don't know how Trump became president. I mean, I know, but it's like, I don't know, 10-year-old. So that's been really interesting too, to have to explain some hard things. And we're all in the same space. We don't have physical space to move around, right? Like stuff happens and you're just like, hey, there's 4 other walls on the other floor. I hope you find them. Like there isn't the same amount of outlets or youth to go talk to be like, my mom said this thing. Have you guys heard that too? It doesn't happen in the same way online. It just doesn't. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've learned with my kids having to have those conversations, over the course of their lives and them now being young adults is like, at least for my kids, their minds almost always go immediately to the safety and care of people that they know. And so going into those conversations with that, kind of at the top of my mind. So, when we talked about George Floyd, kind of opening it with, Lena is fine,
Mm-hmm.
and, here are the people that you care about and, are okay, but, this is going on right now. You need to be aware, and we need to have a conversation, as soon as we're face to face with each other. But I think that has always been, one of the things that I've learned with them, like, when the Seattle uprising was happening, their automatic thought is, is Aisha okay? Is her family okay? And so just knowing that that's kind of how they parse it out. They kind of come from the personal out, and trying to come into it with an understanding of how they're going to process it. And it might be different for your kids. Like, find out what that process is for your kids when you're going to be having these hard conversations.
Don. Okay, I have one more thing I want to talk about before we're done, but I'm going to start with Don, y'all. I feel like I'm directing traffic, but anyway, Don, you're a pet parent, and what does pet parenting look like in the time of COVID? I mean, dogs need socialization. How do you go to the vet or take care of your pet during this like kind of interesting time? Is your cat on your lap? As I started talking to the cat, was like, I heard you.
She was actually on my arm, which was resting on my desk. And that's Maggie. She's my aloof cat. Her brother, Maggie, is for Magdalene, Mary Magdalene, and her brother is Hammy for Octavius Brooks Frothingham, one of our early transcendentalists. And I have a little dog named Quinn, and Quinn is getting old and deaf and arthritic, and now she has a heart condition. So she has to have a pill in the morning and a pill at night. But she's 9 pounds. So I have a fenced in yard, so she doesn't have to go out. Like, I don't have to take her for walks. And because she's going blind, that's a really safe place for her because she knows the perimeters,
Don, what's it like to do healthcare for pets during the pandemic?
Well, getting cats into a box any time of the year is not fun. Presuming it's a box they don't want to go into. If it's an Amazon box, they're all over it. But if it's a plastic box with a little gate on it, forget it. They turn into little armed octopuses. But when I go to the vet, what I do is, because I have to get Quinn's pills every month. So I pull in and they have a thing that says, call us, let us know you're here, and you're in space number 17 or whatever. And then they come out and they take your pet into the building. Like when Quinn hurt her leg a while ago, it was really hard because she's 13. And I was thinking, if she's done something serious, this was going to have to be a decision about whether I was going to come home with a dog or not. Because I don't have the budget to drop $2,000 or $3,000 on ACL surgery for a 14-year-old dog who's then going to have worse arthritis, 13, 14 years old. I'm not interested in prolonging her life for my comfort. And so it was really hard to have them come out and take her leash from the back seat and take her in the building. And I had to sit and wait because I couldn't be in there while they were examining her and answering questions and stuff like that. And, a little while later, I got a phone call and the vet tech was like, so have you ever had an EKG on your dog? I'm like, a what? She's in there because her leg hurts. She's like, no, her leg's fine. What about her heart murmur? I'm like, oh, for the love of Mike. Yeah, so it was. So she hasn't had the EKG, but she is on heart medicine, which is what I have to give her twice a day. And so now what I do is when she's out of pills, I call the vet and I arrange for a pickup. And I just show up and I give them my card over the phone, and they take it out of my checkbook and they bring out the pills and I go away. The cats haven't had to have any shots or anything since the COVID thing, but they're probably going to be doing another 6 months. So
Don, what would have felt supportive, or did your community do anything that would felt supportive of you in that time of, having to take your beloved fur baby to the vet and, sit there and not know, like, what would feel supportive in that time?
Well, for me, one of the things as a parish minister, I have to be careful how much I permit my people to minister to me. I need to make sure that they're not more worried about me, that, that just, it does weird things to the relationship. So what I do is I have a handful of really close friends, the type you can call from jail at 3 a.m. And the ones that you can call and say, I think this might be my last trip with my dog to the vet, who are on standby. I'm in a meeting, but text me, and I'll get out and I'll be with you. And so that's just something we have to do for ourselves. If my congregants have that experience, then I like to be one of those people, right? That I can be there for them while they're having an awful time with their pet or with their child or with whoever they're caring for.
I think that's so important to remind folks to, like, reach out to your community, reach out to your ministers, reach out to, to the folks that are caring for you, because I think a lot of times, particularly folks who, don't have small children in the home or young children in the home, and, their pets really are so much of their lifeline. It's super important. I just want to validate all y'all out there. Like, make sure that somebody is
Quinn has been, Quinn has been my service animal since I got into seminary.
Yeah.
She was a part of my treatment plan dealing with when I started to do heavy duty work on complex PTSD and grief around my father's death. My father being the primary bully abuser in my lifetime. And so she was like the only thing that had been a constant in my life for a number of years. And so she came with me to seminary. She came with me to Andover Newton. She came with me to my internship in California and 2 years of ministry in St. Louis area. And our relationship has shifted now where I'm more her service person, where I'm taking care of her because, she's old and deaf and arthritic and kind of blind. And I think the deaf thing happens except around food. Like, like kids, right? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? They don't hear anything. You open the bag of chips and suddenly you're surrounded by kids, right? Like, I get out the can opener and suddenly I have 2 cats and a dog circling my ankles, wondering what's going to happen. And honestly, the 3 of them have just saved my sanity more times than I can think of in this pandemic. I'm single. I haven't touched another human being in almost a year. That's just so hard. And, they don't answer it all, but they sure help. They sure help.
Don, I just want to acknowledge the power of pets in our lives and the power of touch and community. It is, we're reaching over to 1 o'clock. I just want to bring us back around to that and acknowledge that it's time, and also acknowledge that everyone is doing their part. We are all doing our part to not only survive this pandemic, these layered pandemics, but thrive in it. And if it takes pets, if it takes parenting, if it takes aunties and mapas and uncles and Uncle Bucks, then we are here for it. We are here for collective thriving in our community. through caregiving and loving on each other. Find a mutual aid page and give some money. Find a parent who needs a break. Find a kid who needs to slide down a hill. Find a kid who wants to fly a kite. Find a kid who just needs an air hug. Find a kid to play chess with. Find an adult who needs those things as well. We will see you next week. We don't know what's going to happen, but we care about you and we're glad that you were here today. I hope you find someone to love on and give lots of attention to.
I,
Are we doing hard hands?